guys, I'm Anita and I'm back with another video. Today I wanted to do another video. For a while I've been doing about a lot of things that I want to read in 2020, which I'm really looking forward to, but I thought for a change maybe we should look at what I've been reading over the year instead and looking back a little bit. Also, Merry Christmas to you all. I know that I uploaded a video yesterday, which is today, which ended up being today. I filmed that before Christmas, so I could upload it over the busy Christmas days if I had time. Only to realize that video needed a lot of editing with all of the book covers. It takes so much time to add book covers when you have so many. But today I'm going to be talking about books that I read over the year. So it is my reading survey of 2019. All of the questions comes from a blog. What is it it's called? I forgot the blog's name, but I will put it down here. And there's 30 something questions, and I decided to only pick those that I knew I had an answer to instead of going over questions that I didn't really have an answer to. So I picked and chose a little bit. But it starts out with 3 questions that are more general statistics type stuff. So the first one is, how many books have you read over 2019? And I have time to actually add in some more, but at this present time, on the 29th of December when I filmed this, I have read 177 books. And there's also a question about how many rereads you did, and I don't reread very much, so I haven't reread anything, but I do want to go back and reread more books in the future, but I don't know how to handle it and where to start. And maybe I'll try and see if I can fit it in every month, like one reread every month. That would be great. But we'll see if that's something that can actually happen. And the last of the statistical questions is, what genre did you read from the most? I don't think it's a surprise to anyone, but my most read genre is fantasy, with 56 books out of the 177. But it's not even half of the books. It's maybe a third or something of the books that I read that are fantasy, strictly fantasy. The best book that you read in 2019, I thought it was so difficult deciding which book was my favorite, because I read so many good ones. I rated quite a lot of books 5 stars, but I think the one that left the biggest impact on me, both as I was reading and afterwards, and when I've been thinking about it, is The Calculating Stars by Robinette Cowall. I think it was such an amazing book, and it was well written. Yeah, it's an alternative history, so it's not a true history, but it is just exploring the theory, what if a meteorite strikes the Atlantic Ocean pretty close to the US, and what will happen if that happens, what will it do to the climate. And it sort of basically obliterates all of the east coast of the United States and some of Canada as well. But I really loved it. As you can also probably tell, I tapped it a lot when I read it, so that also means there's a lot of things that I like to reference when I did this. Definitely a good contender to my favorite book of the year. I couldn't come up with other books that fit that. And the second book is the book you were really excited about and thought you were going to love, but you didn't. And that is for me going to be Daisy Jones and the Six. I read it back in November, so last month. And I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I absolutely love that book. It's one of my favorites. One of the books that was competing against The Calculating Stars. But for some reason, this one just didn't connect with me at all. I didn't like the writing style and the structure of the book. So I ended up giving it 2.5 stars, and I was very, very disappointed that it had to be so low, but that is definitely the one that I was most disappointed about. The next question is the best series you've started, the best sequel, and the best series ender that you read in 2019. Okay. The best series starter is obviously also going to be my favorite book of the year, and that is The Calculating Stars. I'm not going to talk more about that one here because I already mentioned it and I already expressed why I enjoyed it so much, but it is the first in a series called the Navy Astronaut series. The best sequel that I read is Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. This is book 20 in the Discworld series. It's also the 4th book set in the Death sub-series, and this was amazing. It's a Christmas-like story set in the Discworld, and our main character, Death, taking the persona as the Hogfather. Hogfather is their version of Santa Claus. So it was really, really amazing. It was funny, it was clever and fast-paced, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. The best series ender, I mean, I only gave one series ender 5 stars, but it also was just me completing this series was an ending of a whole world, and was so emotional to get through it. Like, it wrapped everything up from all of the characters from all of the series, and that is Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb, the 16th book that is set in the realm of the Elderlings universe, but it's the 3rd one in the Fitz and the Fool trilogy. And oh, it took me a long time getting through it because it's like 46 hours long, and I was listening to it as I was going to work and stuff. But it took me 21 days to read it. Like, I got through possibly an hour of reading it every day, like on average, but I loved it. It is definitely one of the best books I read this year as well. It's definitely the best. It's a perfect ender to this whole world because it wraps everything up from all of the other trilogies. Like, there's so many characters from the other trilogies that's part of this series. Like all of the Rain Wilds, all of the Life Ship Trader people, they come together in this one in an epic finale, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, loved it. And I was sad. It was emotional as well. It was beautiful, and it was everything I sort of expect from Robin Hobb at this point. And this just confirms to me that you have to read this series in a specific order, and I'll do a video of that soon because I have a couple of people who ask me where to go and where to start and how to read Robin Hobb, and I think that I might do a video about it, just letting you know what you can do and what you shouldn't do. So that is a thing. The next question is the favorite new author that you discovered. I want to talk about authors that I've read more books than one. But on the other hand, what if I've read one book by an author and I never get to talk about why I love that author that much? But I have 3 authors that I've read more than one book from this year that I also started reading from this year. And the first one is Cleo Coyle, who is the author of the Coffeehouse mystery series, and I really enjoyed both. I gave both books 4 stars, and I definitely am really intrigued to read on in this series. I really enjoyed the way she wrote these cozy mysteries. Like, it was a mystery, but it was also a lot about family, about other things than the mystery itself, and I really enjoyed it. Then, as obviously Mary Robinette Kowal, I read the first 2 books in that series that both follows our main character Elma. This one was better, but this one was also pretty good, and I definitely will recommend Mary Robinette Coyle for her writing. It's really easy to get into, and I am looking forward to reading the sequel to this one so much. It's going to be following some other characters that are also in these books. And the third author I read more than one book from is Taylor Jenkins Reid, where I've read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six. And I loved the first book, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I didn't so much Daisy Jones and the Six, but I'm still incredibly eager to read more books by Taylor Jenkins Reid because I have a feeling that I'm going to enjoy some of her other books for sure. I think this one was a bit more of a mess for me, but I'm still looking forward to reading more. And what I can say about all these 3 authors is that it's an author I definitely want to read more from. I'm going to explore a lot more from this author in the future. So that is that. The next question is the best book from a genre you don't typically read or was out of your comfort zone. And the only genre I could come up with that I have a hard time picking up is nonfiction. It's just something that I don't really think about picking up ever. It's not something that I ever gravitate towards naturally. So for me, that was definitely out of my comfort zone. And the only book that I rated 5-star that I read as a nonfiction is In Order to Live by Yeonmy Park. This was definitely impactful, but I don't know if I love it, but I definitely understand why a lot of people enjoyed this book. It definitely puts a lot of perspective on North Korean regime and stuff like that. And the next question is the most action-packed, thrilling, unputdownable book that you read this year. I don't read a lot of books like back to back, like in a one sitting any longer. I used to do that, but I don't any longer. I read The Calculating Store quite quickly, but one I remember almost reading like in 2 chunks, which is a quite long book. It was like 15 hours of the audio. I just couldn't stop reading it. That was Pet Sematary by Stephen King. It's definitely one of my favorite Stephen Kings now. It was very... It was pretty scary, but I was not uncomfortably scary. I was just really into these characters and what they were doing, and so I really enjoyed it for that. And also just I wanted to talk about some other books that I also really loved. So there were so many books that were great this year, so I felt this one fit quite well into that category. Because it was thrilling, it was definitely unputdownable, and it was also not action-packed, but it was thrilling and unputdownable to me. The next question is the most memorable character you read of 2019 that you read, or that you discovered in 2019, and that for me is going to be Evelyn Hugo, because she was just such a memorable character to me. I really enjoyed this book, and I definitely enjoyed it because she was so interesting. It was like she was very... her own person, and I really enjoyed how the author wrote her and how she didn't really care about what other people thought of the way that she was doing things, just as long as she got what she wanted, and I thought that was pretty interesting. Next question is the most beautifully written book that you read, and that is definitely going to be Wild Beauty by Anne-Marie McLemore. Anne-Marie McLemore writes really an amazing atmospheric type of writing style that I really enjoy, because they just seem to really add some layers and stuff to the writing without it being too much, and I really appreciated that. The next question is a book you can't believe you waited so long to read, and that for me is definitely going to be The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is a book that has been out since the 30s. And everyone has been talking about how this is a book that everyone should read, like if you're a fantasy reader. My brother loves this universe, and I definitely enjoyed it a lot. I understand why it's so loved. It is just, he has a writing that's really just draws you into the universe or the world that he's created, and it just makes it very atmospheric and rich, and yeah, definitely looking forward to reading the Lord of the Rings books now, for sure. And the next one is the shortest book and the longest book that you read of the year. The shortest book that I read is a graphic type of novel, and that is Nuking Shu. Nøkken is, I don't know, this is not it's more like a picture book, but it has a lot of text. So it is the 12th book in a series that I just started this year. And it is illustrated by the same team that illustrates the Valhalla series, so that's why I went to read it. And I really enjoyed it, but like it's also really short. It's like only 40 pages and it's graphic. It has large illustrations on every page, so there's not a lot of text, so it was really short. The longest book I read this year, not surprisingly, because also apparently the longest book I ever read, and that is A Dance with Dragons by J.R.R. Martin, the 5th book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. This has 1184 pages, but I thought that it had I thought that the stand was longer than this, because I think that edition is longer than this one, but the edition that I chose to read on Goodreads says that it's not. But the stand is most definitely, I think, longer than this one. But 1100 pages is still a lot of pages, so I think it definitely deserves a spot as the longest book I read this year. So then the next question is the favorite book you read in 2019 from an author you've already read from previously. And that is definitely going to be Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. I've mentioned it already. This is the best sequel. I love Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett is one of my absolute favorite authors. Like, I could say that maybe Assassin's Fate is great, or one of those books, but I actually think this one deserves that spot a little bit more, even though everything else was so also amazing. This one got the spot. The next question is the best book you've read based on a recommendation from somebody else. I never would have read It Ends With Us if it wasn't because of Lala's favorite book thing that I did over the past year, because I had already just thrown it out the window, which was the author Colleen Hoover was not one I wanted to read from any longer. But then I read this one and I actually was quite obsessed with it. I read it quite fast as well. It could have been a contender for the most unputdownable book, but it's not like thrilling. It was just, I needed to know how this was going to end, even though the subject matter is abuse and it's not comfortable reading about it, but I just had a feeling that I needed to know what was going to happen by the end, and I was really happy with how it all ended up and where the author left us. So I was pretty happy with this book and gave it 5 stars, so it deserves this spot because I would have not read it had it not been for that project. And the 24th question is, what is the best world building that you read this year? For me, that's going to be The Foundryside by Robert Jackson Bennett. I really, really enjoyed the world building this one. The magic system is so interesting. It's so different than any other fantasy series that I've read. It definitely takes sort of mixed sort of science into the fantasy system, which is something that I enjoy. The characters were also really interesting, but this book gets the spot for best world building because I'm so intrigued by what's going to happen in the coming books because of how things evolved in this one, and because of the world building, I think it can go so many places, so I'm really intrigued. And the last question that I wrote something down for is what books made you cry? And I have 3 books that made me cry. I'm unsure if I forgot some, but the first book that made me cry was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman. This was just beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. It is a really, really short book about a boy and his grandfather and his grandfather's Alzheimer's and how he's slowly forgetting things, but they keep meeting at this bench, and the boy starts to notice how his grandfather is forgetting things and not really knowing why and understanding the whys of what is happening, and it was definitely very impactful. The next one that made me cry was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This one had a pretty emotional ending, in my opinion. Like, it was not like the end of the book, but it was like, I would say about 80% or something into the book that something happened. But yeah, I can't tell you about it because it'll be spoilery. So yeah, I definitely cried at that. I didn't expect to, so it was sort of coming out of nowhere for me. And the third book that also made me cry was definitely Assassin's Fate. There were so many moments in this book where I was teary and where I had to stop listening to just gather my emotions. I couldn't be sitting out in the car crying, so I had to sort of pause things in order to get myself back into focus, because when you're driving you have to be aware of stuff around you. But I definitely had a couple of moments in that book that was really, really heartbreaking. So yeah, those 3 books definitely is books that I remember vividly crying over. But yeah, definitely a lot of great books I read over the past year. Let me know in the comments down below what were some of your favorite books that you read over 2019. What was your biggest accomplishment? I know that's not necessarily one of the book questions in here, but for me that was definitely Assassin's Fate and finishing that whole series. So I'd like to know what was your biggest accomplishment over the past year, and what are you most proud of reading, and all of that. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next video very, very soon. Goodbye!